were you diagnosed? Oh, are you recording?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. When were you diagnosed and what age?
I was diagnosed June 12th, 2012 at 46.
At 46.
Now you can calculate my age.
What stage were you diagnosed with?
Initially, it was just a stage one, and because the cancer didn't really spread. So, but once when they took the lymph nodes out, it was qualified as stage two because one of the micrometastases was in one of my lymph nodes. But that's really very early. At any rate, it was an early stage.
How was the cancer initially detected?
I went for my regular mammogram, and I have been going to mammograms ever since I was 35 years old, and that was to the advice of a doctor um, because of the cystic tissue that I had in my breasts, and basically I was supposed to start very early. It was hard to read the mammogram, so I constantly went and had a lot of biopsies, 3 or 4 before this finding, so to call it.
How did you feel when you first received the news?
Mhm. I felt like my whole world just got turned upside down, and you probably hear that a lot from cancer survivors, but it is just, I felt like I was on top of my game. I was very healthy. Otherwise, I guess I didn't know about this condition. All my blood work, I do my physical yearly exams and everything. My blood work was all great. Everything was really upside the size in. My hair was the way I wanted it. Finally had a color I wanted. And I felt like all of that was just wiped out in one moment. And of course, I'm not even talking about the deeper issues like, teenage children and husband and work and just that imminence of closeness of death and thinking about, oh my God, am I going to survive it? That's probably the first thought that came into my head. Will I see my children graduate in high school? Something like that. So.
How did your family take it?
Uh, my husband and I have had a lot of conversations about cancer before that ever happened to me, and we knew immediately if I was ever diagnosed that I would just do the mastectomy and not worry about that, and then because we felt like that would to immediately eradicate the source of problem and then go on with the treatment. So we kind of were on the same page there. Of course, it was devastating for both of us, but my husband was very instrumental, like in many ways, and very helpful because he would be making instrumental in organizing the whole scenario for me having a surgery and then starting the chemo treatment and radiation ultimately and all that. So he was a big support. He was my biggest supporter, obviously, but he kind of took over and talked to the doctors, made appointments, did the research on the internet. I never even wanted to look at the internet and see what my chances of survival are or anything like that. I really don't like when people get turned into numbers. That's just so disheartening. And I honestly didn't even want to know the diagnosis. He sent it to me, and my husband, I was in Europe when I found out about diagnosis because I was so persuaded that I was all healthy and well. So, anyways, it was very, very tough time. So I would not want it even for an enemy. So.
Is there a family history of breast cancer?
No, more so because there is no family history of breast cancer, so it came as a complete surprise. I mean, at any time in stage and any kind of cancer, it comes as a surprise because usually it's this quiet killer that lives. And I didn't have any symptoms to say like I felt that was something off or whatever. I just felt great, and all of a sudden they hit me with diagnosis. So it was even much more traumatic, I would say, because of that.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your treatment process.
Well, I've gone for the full-fledged treatment, as they would say. I'm still in treatment, by the way, because I'm taking tamoxifen, which is not like I don't have to go for chemo treatment or anything, but that's like the treatment for this type of cancer lasts 5 years. The first thing was to do schedule a surgery, breast surgery, and as I said already, I went for mastectomy. Then after that, I went. As soon as I healed, about 4 weeks later, I started the chemo treatment. I only had to go to 4 chemo treatments, which is very good because um, it really it wore me out regardless. So I can imagine what it does to people who have to have 8 or 10 chemo treatments or something like that. It's a very powerful, strong treatment. But I tried to think about it as a way of helping myself. Every time I got the chemo treatment, I felt like, okay, well, this is killing the good cells, we know it, but it's also killing the bad ones, and this is the only medicine that actually has some results as far as cancer treatment goes. And then I was offered the option to not to do the radiation, but I decided to go with it, mainly because, as I said, my major concern was, oh my God, will I see my children graduate high school, because they're young, and of course now one of them graduated. He's already in college, the other one is on the way out too, so no more concern there. But I wanted to live, so I was like, okay, I have to do everything. I'll do step by step. So I was done with my chemo treatment at the end of October, and my last radiation treatment was in February. In the meantime, I managed to go to Costa Rica with my son for like a couple of weeks and prepare him for his governor's honors program and that kind of things. And I worked the whole time. I was working every day.
So how did breast cancer affect teaching?
That's it. As I said, I worked the whole time, and I think if you have heard of a foggy brain, when sometimes the chemo treatments will get a foggy brain because all the chemicals that are injected in their bodies. So I could definitely relate to that because I have always been good with languages, and obviously I teach them. And sometimes in the middle of the class, I would just kind of stop, pause, and think, oh my God, what am I going to say now? Just get lost, basically. So my cognitive ability was going down, and that was very hard for me to accept, but it's back. I mean, a few months after the treatment, I was back to normal. There was I don't think there are any residue, seriously. Maybe physical, I don't know. I mean, whatever is in our body, because chemicals in the chemo affect everything, all organs and everything. But as far as teaching, I was I insisted that I go to work every day, and I insisted to see the students and all that. I did tell them not to ever come to class if they're sick, because I was not wearing a mask. So what would happen usually, I would go on Wednesday for chemo treatment, and then Friday Professor O'Brien would give the students a test. I would not come to work on Friday for to rest a little bit, and then I'd come back on Monday. But it was only 4 treatments, so that's why it wasn't so dramatic, so to speak. And then when I would be somewhere in the middle, with my cycles of chemo treatment was 3 weeks. So when I would be somewhere around 7th and 10th day, that's when my mechanism of defense was the lowest. The blood cells were very low, almost non-existent, some of them. I was supposed to stay home a little bit more, but I tried to be very conscientious, and I would wash my hands all the time, and just kind of take precautions, and keep those sanitizers as I have right now on my desk, and spray Lysol everywhere. Professor Hernandez was bringing Lysol everywhere we went, and she took me many places during that time, and she just would be spraying everything, like handles, doorknobs, tables, desks, whatever, she would just spray it as we went, and bring in the what's the name, hand sanitizer. So anyways, teaching, I don't know, it was really my my escape, I think, during that time, because it was so difficult for me to process the whole truth about my health and everything. I accepted it, obviously, and I don't want to say I fought it. I accepted it as a part of my being and just dealt with it. And I'm still dealing with it because I still take hormonal therapy. So, and that's going to last until in a couple of years I'll be done. But still, I feel great. And ultimately, really, the biggest, how to say, barometer of your happiness and of wellness, I should say, is how you feel and how you project yourself. And you know, if you're feeling, and if people see feeling happy and healthy, people see you that way, and then you know, most likely you are happy and healthy. Of course, you always know you have this condition that can flare up in any moment, but you know, you deal with it as you go, on a daily basis, basically. That's what I would say.
Did you face any obstacles during your treatment process? If so, how did you overcome the obstacles?
Obstacles. What I didn't like is long wait. Like, you know, well, when I would go for chemo treatments, it was relatively quick to get in, and I mean, you stay there. I would stay there a whole day, basically receiving the treatment. So getting in was not a problem, but like appointments and waiting for doctors, and that's really, I think, it's a shameful position for most of the people who have cancer and or any other condition. If you're a patient and if you're on a time schedule, you're told to show up certain time, and then doctors seem to take their time, medical doctors anyways, and don't really necessarily, not all of them, I'm not going to say, some of them are very precise, they try, you know, but for the most part it's just a long wait, and every time when you're waiting for the results of something, you're adding on to your stress because you already have all this. It's just such a dark place once when you get diagnosed, that you don't want to deal with extra logistics of like getting to an appointment, having to sit there for an hour and look at these unhappy, unhealthy people and getting even more depressed. So you know, those are the things that were biggest adversity as far as my experience goes.
Okay. What message would you like to provide women in the community?
I would just say that getting diagnosed with breast cancer, no matter what your age or background or national, racial, whatever, we all become all of a sudden sisters, you know. We can relate to each other a lot better if we had gone through such an excruciating thing in our life. However, getting diagnosed by breast cancer nowadays doesn't mean you're receiving a death sentence anymore. I'm not saying you will always, I will always have a fear as far as, you know, oh, any little pain or something, oh my God, it could be related or something. But my message would be that if you're in a treatment, just think beyond that, and think along the lines that this too shall pass. That was my mantra when I was going through the treatment. And also think about you will most likely survive this battle. I mean, keep in mind the percentages, keep in mind that early detection is something that is really very important, and keep in mind again that being given a breast cancer diagnosis doesn't mean that you're given a death sentence, doesn't mean that you go down into the dumps and just become this depressed person that doesn't want to live. You go on with living and you live life like, you know, deal with it, and then hopefully eventually in nearest history there'll be some cure for breast cancer found soon, I hope, so that our daughters and girls your age, you're like my daughter because you're my student, my students, my children, my friends' children don't have to go through the same thing. So basically that's it.
Okay, so look in the camera.
Okay. What am I
Look in the
supposed?
camera.
I need to practice this.
Yeah, just you can keep recording.
Okay, so what?
Any language, you can say more than one. It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
But just the last one, say it in English, of course.
Okay, I'm gonna say it in my language first.
Well, just say what language it is and then say
Okay, I say it in Serbo-Croatian. Ja sam Irina Medenica I Tedrick. Preživjela sam rak dojke. Minja, now I'm gonna say it in Russian. Меня зовут Ирина Меденица Тедрик, и я осталась в живых после рака груди. I'll say it in Spanish. Me llamo Irina Tedrick y soy sobreviviente del tratamiento de cáncer de seno. What else?
You can say it in English now. That's all.
In English. I'm Irina Medenica Tedrick and I am breast cancer survivor.
Thank you.
Assignments that I want from you, whether they're from the book or from a workbook packet. Workbook packet, since I'm already going through all this trouble of making copies, it is the must. You have to. You avoid working too much or extra. That way you can have a little bit of help in class with these exercises. So I'm listing this as a study guide. I tell you that you will need to know all the.
She's a big, furry, she's 10 months old and 110 pounds already. And I walk her twice a day, 3 days a week. It's like exercise.
And do they pay you? I mean.